Welcome to Eat to Treat. I'm Dr. Amaris Williams. I have a PhD in nutrition, and I'm an avid foodie and a cook, and I'm part of Eat to Treat, which is a nonprofit that aims to end health disparities. So every Saturday, not every Saturday, every first and third Saturday, we do a cooking demonstration that's a live cook along cooking demonstration, and we post the ingredients ahead of time on Eat to Treat, eat-to-treat.org, where you can find the ingredients, buy them ahead of time, and then cook along with us in the kitchen. As we make a diabetes or hypertension friendly meal. So the diabetes friendly meals are every first Saturday, and the hypertension friendly meals are every third Saturday. So today we're making steak kebabs, which are a diabetes friendly meal, and we're gonna top them with hot sauce. And this is a very easy recipe. The main thing that I'm showing you here is how to make the marinade for the steak, which is the marinade that I always use when I make steak, and my brother still talks about it. I made him the steak. It had to be at least 3 years ago, and he still talks about it. So let's get started. Let me change the camera. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is make the marinade. So we'll get a bowl, and we need, I think it's a half a cup of, no, it's a quarter cup of Worcester sauce. I never know how to pronounce it. It has way more letters in it than you actually pronounce. Um, but I'm just using this brand, the Lee and Perkins, and I'm gonna pour a quarter cup of Worcester sauce, if I can get it to come out. All right, and I think that the Worcester flavor is the most important flavor in the marinade, but you guys can be the judge of that. Next, I've got some low sodium soy sauce. It doesn't have to be expensive because we are using a decent amount of it. And my recipe calls for a third of a cup of soy sauce. So that's what I'm going to put in there. But normally when I make this, I just eyeball it. I just throw some Worcester in there, throw some soy in there, just enough to cover the steak. And then I put my seasonings in there, and then I'll put a little bit of oil on top. I don't put the whole amount of oil in there. So the next thing is the basil, and we need about a tablespoon of basil. So I'm just going to put a tablespoon of basil in there. And garlic powder. Another tablespoon of garlic powder. My garlic powder is hard as a rock. You guys see that? It's completely, the moisture in the air from the summer has made it turn into rocks. So let me get some more garlic powder. I have more, so don't worry. Be right back. Okay, I go through a lot of garlic powder, so I buy it in bulk. I've got this big old jug of garlic powder. Um, oh yeah, that's my brother Miles. He said thanks for the shout out. All right. So tablespoon of garlic powder. Pour that in there. And last but not least, we want to put some pepper and some oil, some olive oil in there. The pepper, I don't measure, like, when I make this, measuring is not important when you're making this marinade. You're not going to be able to taste the difference between a quarter cup and a third cup of soy sauce in relation to the Worcester sauce. So just put what looks good to you in there, and your steak is going to be just fine. When I normally make this recipe, I do add cayenne pepper to the marinade, but because we're putting hot sauce on this, I'm not putting cayenne in the marinade. But if you were making this to make a steak, just to have a steak, put a little bit of cayenne pepper in there. And then I just top it with olive oil, because olive oil some of the flavors dissolve in water, and some of the flavors dissolve in oil. So we want some oil in there so the oil soluble flavors dissolve, have something to dissolve into. And it also helps the steak not stick because it's going to be coated in a little bit of oil. All right. So I'm just whisking it with my tongs, and let's now cut up the steak. This is the steak that I got. It's some filet. When I went to Aldi, that's all they had was filet. They didn't have any ribeye. And it actually came wrapped in bacon, so I took the bacon off. For this recipe, we don't want the bacon on. I've never tried cooking filet with bacon. I feel like filet is a cut that doesn't really need any kind of special anything, because it's normally very very flavorful and tender. So why do you need bacon? But I don't know. So I'm cutting this into about 1 inch, 1¼ inch cubes. This is the size that we're going to cut everything in. So whatever size you cut your steak in, and then I'm going to put it in the marinade over here. Whatever size you cut your steak into, that's what you're going to cut all your vegetables into as well. Because you want the similar size or smaller for the vegetables, so that when you put your steak on the grill, it actually makes contact with the grill. If you make your vegetables bigger than your steak and you put it on the grill, then the steak won't touch the grill and it won't get the char marks and it won't get done. Whereas the vegetables will still cook even if they're not quite touching the grill. Ask me how I know this. When I tested this recipe out with, I actually used tuna steaks, and I didn't marinate the tuna steaks. I just put salt and pepper on the tuna steaks. I think the marinade would be a little bit too much for tuna. But when I tried this recipe out with tuna steaks, I made the tuna steaks too small, and they did not get brown, and it was not very good. So just FYI on that. So I'm just going to use my tongs to get the marinade to cover everything. And then we're just going to let that sit while we cut up our vegetables. So, alrighty. And we have plenty of flavor in there on that. And you don't need to add salt to this because we're using soy sauce, which has enough salt for 3 or 4 people in it. So, even the low sodium soy sauce is still very high in sodium. So don't let the low sodium fool you. It's lower sodium. It's not low sodium. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is cut up the vegetables, and you can do this in any order you feel like. I think I'm going to cut up my pineapple first, but I'm going to wipe down my board because I did just have raw meat on it, and I'm not going to put all the pineapple on the skewers. Some of it I'm probably going to eat raw, so it's going to be, I don't want cross-contamination of raw meat on my raw pineapple that I'm going to eat raw at some point. So So that's a little bit of food safety for you. Okay, so this is the pineapple I got. It's not the prettiest one, but it was the prettiest one that was available. So, um, smells ripe. It's starting to yellow at the bottom. You can see how it's yellow. That's kind of the sweetness and the ripeness happening. If it's all green, like all the way around, I should have gotten two so that I could show you what one is not ripe. But that one is not ripe. But if you have a little bit of yellow on it, then it's generally ripe. What is the maximum time to marinate the steak? I have marinated this steak in this recipe for a week in the fridge. And I think that if you do it that long, the flavor kind of overpowers the meat itself. But it's not a bad flavor. It's just too much. So I would say shorter than a week. But 3 days I'd say is ideal. But as long as you want to, basically. And after a week, that's when your steak is not good anymore. So I wouldn't eat a steak that's been in the fridge for a week, even if it's in a marinade that's full of salt and all the things. So pineapple. You saw me cut the top off and the bottom off, and now I'm cutting down the sides. Just going straight down the side, and and just cutting the edges off. All right, and then so they sell these like pineapple spiralizers, and those are good. They work. But for this, we want big chunks of pineapple, the same size as our steak. So I'm not using a spiralizer. I'm going to cut the core out, which I don't know if you guys can see. It's this little circle. I'm going to cut that. I'm just going to cut around it. And then I'm going to cut these big old hunkin' pieces of pineapple into smaller chunks. That's a good piece right there. Okay. So let's give this a taste. Now, pineapple will raise your blood sugar. Most of the stuff we put on this skewer is not going to raise your blood sugar, but pineapple will. I picked a good pineapple. This is good. All right, let me while you guys are catching up, if you're making this at home, let me show you the nutrition facts. So as you can see, we've got 8 grams of carbohydrate in one skewer. This is nutrition facts over here. This is nutrition facts for one skewer. So about 105 calories, which is not bad at all. That's really good. But 8 grams of sugar, and that's due to the pineapple mostly. If you use summer squash like zucchini or the yellow squash, then it'll be slightly less or fewer carbs, fewer grams of carbs per skewer. But if you're on insulin, you can adjust your insulin accordingly. And it does say that 5 of those grams of carbohydrates are sugar, but it's fruit sugar. It's not as bad as like straight up sugar, but it's still sugar. So this is not a like everyday meal. This is let's have some friends over and barbecue. And instead of having deep fried wings with sauce and pizza, this is a better alternative. So let's get back to the cooking. So I'm just gonna cut my pineapple into chunks about the same size as my steak. And then set them to the side. Okay. And then this pineapple, I won't cut up because I'll just eat this later. Okay. Next up, mushrooms. If you're using mushrooms, not everybody likes mushrooms, but I'm gonna cut these in half just so they won't be too big. I won't use that one. That one's too big. And and then those will be ready. I'm not gonna do anything fancy with the mushrooms. Just cut them in half. Okay. And next up is the bell pepper. I've cut a lot of bell peppers on this channel. You've probably seen this a million times, but a bell pepper is like a box with seeds in it. We're just going to cut the edges of the box, the walls of the box off, and leave the insides intact. The insides is what holds all the seeds together. So I'm just going to cut down the sides like I did with the pineapple. Turn it. Cut down the side again. Turn it. This one's kind of triangular, so I'm only going to do 3 sides. It's kind of like a prism. So, and then all my seeds are intact in the middle, and I'm just going to throw that out. This bell pepper now, we just cut in the same size squares as our steak. Or smaller. And that's probably enough. I'm only going to make a few skewers, but if you're having people over or if you're making these ahead of time to enjoy later, then you might use a whole bell pepper. I have a half an onion here that's already peeled and cut in half. I cut it in half through the stem to hold it together, but I'm going to cut the stem end off because I'm going to peel the layers apart. So cut the stem end off, and it makes it easier to peel the layers apart. And then this is a small onion, so I'm just going to cut it in half, turn it, and cut it in half again. And so now, like Shrek said, there's layers, and you can just peel the layers apart and keep peeling the layers apart, and you've got perfectly sized pieces of onion to put on your skewers. All right, and so we did that. Oh, one thing that's not in the recipe that I tried this morning, I made this recipe this morning just to practice, and jalapenos. So this is a kind of a one that's been in my fridge for a while, but still good. At first when I was making this recipe, I was like, ooh, jalapenos would be good with the pineapple, but it would probably be too much because it's not going to be cooked all the way through or in anything like that. But actually, when I tried it this morning with the pineapple and the jalapeno, it wasn't too much. These jalapenos are not very spicy. They're pretty mild. So it was a nice flavor combo to go with the pineapple and the tuna steaks that I was using. But all the same, I'm not cutting the jalapeno as big as the other vegetables or as big as the steak. I'm cutting it smaller so that it's not too much jalapeno in your mouth. So just gonna keep doing that, and I'm removing the seeds because who wants to chew on jalapeno seeds? And the seeds have a lot of the spice in them, so definitely peel the seeds, the pith and the seeds out, and put that in your compost. All right. Almost done here. I think that's all the produce I had. I don't have any more. Oh, no, I have tomatoes. But the tomatoes, we're not going to cut those. Those are whole. We're just going to stick a skewer through them. And then I like the tomatoes on the skewers because as you heat them up, they kind of soften a little bit. And then when you bite them off the skewer, they kind of explode in your mouth, this warm tomato juice, and it's really good. All right. So now we're ready to assemble. So I'm going to turn my grill pan on. I'm going to put it on a 6 out of 10. Excuse me. 6 out of 10. This induction burner that I have heats cast iron, but it's not as efficient at heating cast iron as is, say, a gas range or an electric range. Put a little bit of olive oil in your grill pan or on your grill if you're using a grill. And then you can spread it around with a brush like this or with paper towels. But because the induction is not as efficient with the heating, it's probably, you may want to put yours on a lower setting than I'm putting mine on, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. So we're getting greased up here. Alright, so while that's heating and getting nice and hot, let's talk about the skewers. I ordered these skewers off of a place that doesn't pay me to talk about them, but it is an online place, and they were too long. So my grill pan has a lip around it. Can I air this? Air it where? I'm confused. Oh, can I air fry this? I'm sorry, I couldn't see the fry. It just said, can I air this? Okay, sorry. Yeah, I got it. Sorry. Yeah. So I don't know if you have wooden skewers, maybe those would go well in an air fryer. Especially if you soak them in water first so that they don't catch fire. Um, I don't know that you could fit a skewer like this in a air fryer. This one is about, it was 14 inches long, and then I bent the end because it was too long for my pan, and it was like making it so that my food wasn't touching the heat. So, if you can get wooden skewers and break them so they fit in your air fryer basket, and then I would try it and see how it works. But you might want to put a little bit of oil, olive oil, on your on your vegetables and your meat, so that there's a little bit of oil involved, and that'll just improve the flavor and the texture. So my skillet is starting to smoke a little bit, so I'm gonna put my bell pepper on, and then it doesn't really matter what order. Just think about what order you like to eat them. So I want my jalapeno next to my pineapple, so I'm gonna do bell pepper, then jalapeno, then pineapple, and I'm gonna turn this down just briefly because it is smoking, and then I'll get a layer of onion. And finally, let's get some steak out of this marinade. And then put a mushroom, because I like mushrooms next to my steak. Okay? And a mushroom. And then I'll just repeat it again. So, bell pepper, jalapeno, pineapple, onion, and steak, and mushroom. And then let's get this on the heat so that it stops smoking. Alright, put it back up. And really, that's the whole recipe. It is very simple, like Miss Geraldine said. And oh, tomatoes. You're right. Tomatoes. Yes, I am completely. That's the best part, really, is the tomatoes. Besides the steak, the steak is really good, but the tomatoes, the explosion in the mouth. So I'm using these sweet tomatoes that, even though they're sweet, they're not really gonna raise your blood pressure much. Not blood pressure, but blood sugar much. So um, definitely a good choice there. All right, so I'm gonna make another skewer. I mean, this is really not rocket science. You just stick the stuff on the stick and then put it on the heat. And what you want to do is rotate your skewer. So once it is seared on one side, which should take a couple of minutes, depending on how hot you have your grill. So once you've got it seared on one side, turn it 90 degrees, sear it on that side, and then turn it again. Keep turning it four times to get all four sides seared. And by then, the meat will be cooked enough for me. I like my meat rare, but if you like your meat more cooked than that, then you can put it in the oven, or you can turn the heat down so it and cook it longer on each side, and that'll make it cook through to the middle faster or slower, really. But you get what I'm saying. All right. I got I got onion. Okay, back to the beginning. Bell peppers, mushroom. I'm running out of space. Let's get the steak on there. That's the important part. And definitely you can do this with shrimp if you don't want to use steak. Steak is not an everyday type of food. You want to limit your red meat. So definitely, if you want to have this more often, replace the steak with shrimp or salmon. If you get skinless salmon, or if you skin it, I showed you how to skin salmon in the salmon stew, the Thai curry salmon stew video, which I did in January. You skin the salmon, cut it into cubes, and put it on the skewer and cook it the same way you would the steak. I would not marinate the salmon, but you can season it with salt and pepper, and maybe some thyme. Yeah, salt, pepper, and thyme probably be good. And then, or shrimp. You can also use shrimp and put the same seasoning on there that you would put on the salmon. Okay, so mine is going pretty well here. Let me see if it's hot. It's not hot. Okay. It's not quite ready yet to flip, but I'm going to change the camera angle. All right. So we made a diabetes-friendly steak kebab. I showed you how to make a steak marinade that's really delicious. Everyone in my family loves it. Um, and and then we marinated the steak and then made kebabs and put vegetables on it. The vegetables kind of make this DASH diet and the diabetes prevention program appropriate. Like their guidelines say, you definitely want more fruits and veggies than meats. So definitely load up on the fruits and veggies. You can serve this with brown rice or another whole grain like corn. um, and that's really about it. There's if you're watching your blood sugar, limit the pineapple, limit the squash. But other than that, everything else is good to go. So eat it to your heart's content. maybe not that. uh, but thank you for joining me. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and the bell icon. And again, I'll see you on the first and the third Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, making diabetes and hypertension friendly meals. Okay, bye bye.